The coalition federally have two things going for them in recent weeks, which have enormously strengthened their hand in the eyes of traditional Liberals. One of those two things is Peter, the other is Dutton. Peter Dutton has made Liberals believe in Liberal again. Last week he put an end to the corrosive nonsense that's gone on in the Defence Forces for too long. A Defence People Group communication plan had been prepared for the International Day against homophobia, biphobia, interphobia and transphobia, which told Defence Force members last Friday they should wear rainbow colours and host morning teas to acknowledge the day. And the so-called plan said, quote, "Do not assume that everyone is heterosexual or that this is the norm. Avoid using language such as wife or husband that assumes all relationships are heterosexual." Now, I have to say, I'm not living in a cave. I don't know anyone who's homophobic or biphobic or transphobic. It's got nothing to do with it. Banning language such as wife or husband is a bridge too far. If an individual chooses to speak about his or her partner, that's fine. The best this crowd could do to support their case was to quote someone who felt awkward when he turned up on deployment and people asked if he had a girlfriend. Can we get a bit serious here? If you don't have a girlfriend, you say you don't have a girlfriend. But the notion that you can't use the words ladies, gents or guys, or that we should be asking people what their pronoun is, his or him or he or her or she, as one ex-soldier sensibly said, how are we ever going to fight a war against China when we're busy running around waging a war on pronouns? Something is clearly amiss in the Department of Defence. He said it okayed the Port of Darwin sale to China, but wants to ban words like husband and wife. The ex-soldier said, quote, "Peter Dutton has started well, but he needs to clean out defence and ensure that it focuses on its actual job, ensuring Australia's security, and ignores the delusional demands of the perpetually unhappy Rainbow Brigade." Well, the Defence Minister, Peter Dutton, joins me from Canberra. Minister, thank you for your time. What is your comment on all of this?
Pleasure, Alan. Well, thank you very much for standing up for Australia, and a lot of people have. Over the course of the last few days, there's been an enormous amount of support for the stance that we've taken. It's a common sense approach, and most people want our Defence Force to be in the best possible shape they can be in. We need to make sure that we have every support for our personnel. I've made it clear to the chiefs of the Defence Force that I won't tolerate discrimination on any basis. But our business is to make sure that we can keep Australia safe and secure. We're investing money in our people, in the equipment that they need to fulfil that task, and that's the only focus that I have and that they too should have. I've said to our troops before, I've got their backs, and we want to make sure that we support them in getting back to business, and I hope that we've further reinforce that message through my decision last week.
You certainly did. The New South Wales President of the Australian Peacekeeper and Peacemaker Veterans Association, Bruce Relf, said, "We know we have people of different kinds, but we shouldn't be walking around on eggshells because of it. Defence is in danger of excluding the majority by bending over backwards to try to include the minority." Is there anything wrong with that comment?
Well, Alan, I think when you're telling people that you can't use language like husband or wife, or
yes,
you're asking for people for pronouns. I'm sorry, it doesn't have a place in the modern Defence Force. We don't discriminate against people. I don't care people's sexual orientation, their skin colour, their race, their religion. It's completely irrelevant. We treat everybody the same, and we're not going to. We don't have time. We don't have the capacity to embark on these sorts of quasi-political agendas. We need to make sure that our troops are in the best possible trained fighting machine in the world. And that's why our allies respect us, and it's why our enemies fear us. And that's how it should be. We have a professional Defence Force, and that's the focus.
There's no one running around, surely, in the Defence Force asking you whether you're gay or trans or bi or intersex, are they?
Well, I suspect it's probably against the law that they can't discriminate on that basis. And as you say, this is part of the problem in this whole woke debate more generally at the moment. You've got activists on social media who might have a dozen followers who all of a sudden are bullying companies and government departments into positions that does not reflect the majority view. People who are working their guts out in the suburbs and in regional towns around the country, they work hard for their money. They pay their taxes and they pay the wages of the Australian Defence Force personnel, and the ADF personnel are grateful for that. And they expect the personnel of the Australian Defence Force to be trained to do the best that they can, not to be off on these frolics. And I've made it very clear that this is not to happen again.
Well, see, what is disturbing, I think, to many people, Minister, is that you put your foot down, then the Defence Chief issued a directive which said the members, ADF members, must at all times be focused on our primary mission to protect Australia's national security and so on. And this Defence Chief Campbell said we must be putting effort into matters that distract us. But Peter Dutton, prior to you becoming Defence Minister, the same Angus Campbell said, because of an unread Brereton report and untested evidence, we'd be compensating Afghan families. How does this fit with the same Campbell saying on Friday we must be focused on protecting Australia's national security interests?
Well, Alan, we've set up a process in relation to these matters, and I think that needs to run its course. There's an investigation going on which will either clear people or it will say that people have a case to answer. That is adhering to the rule of law. It's a key part of who we are, our democracy, and what, frankly, the Australian Defence Force has fought for in the past. And people should be afforded the presumption of innocence. And that's the principle by which
But just coming back to those morning teas, though, why would you be needed to tell the Defence Force Chief that this business about changing language protocols and morning teas, why should you have to tell them that should cease? I mean, surely that was common sense. Do you mean to say that Campbell, the defence boss, didn't know these morning teas and pronoun recommendations weren't circulating amongst the defence staff? Or did this bloke condone them until you stopped it?
Well, Alan, I've given clear direction once I'd been made aware of this particular circumstance, and I've made my position very clear. The Defence Force Chief and the Secretary of my department have issued that direction, as you say, and that direction will be complied with. And
do you have confidence in Angus Campbell? Do you have confidence in
Angus? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I mean, this is a man who has served his country in the SAS. He's, I think, one of the most distinguished Australians. I have absolute confidence in him, and in relation to these matters where I believe there's clarification required, that's the job of the minister. And ministers of the day since Federation have made directions or changed the course of organisations because that's what we're paid to do.
Good on you.
And my job is to provide that support and that leadership to the organisation, and I think the vast majority of members support that position.
They certainly do. But just coming back to Campbell, he was one of the commanders in Afghanistan between 2005 and 2011. That was a period covered in the Brereton report. So if you apply the Yamashita standard, to which we are signatories through the Geneva Convention, if our soldiers are going to have to face the music, according to Brereton, so must Campbell, who was the Commander-in-Chief of Operation Sovereign Borders from 2013 to 2015. Surely too must the Governor-General, who was the Chief of the Defence Force between 2011 and 2014. I mean, how does the Brereton report, Minister, have any credibility when it says, oh, we must exonerate these people? Do you understand that, you know, we've got a Royal Commission into veteran suicide? The most pervasive cause of mental trauma is the Defence Force leadership or lack of it.
Well, Alan, I've put my cards on the table, and I've been very clear about my position in relation to this, and this is a position that the organisation is well aware of. Firstly, I made a decision in relation to the unit citations. I didn't believe that there should be a blanket approach, and I made that decision, and I believe very strongly it's the right decision. Secondly, there are people every day within the Defence Force who are disciplined for different matters, for not obeying the authority, not listening to a direction given by a superior officer. That's the nature of Defence Forces, and it's no different for the ADF. So if people have done the wrong thing, if there is evidence to demonstrate that they have done the wrong thing, then people will be held to account. And we're not going to depart from that. But
Peter, I understand that, but how could the Brereton report be authored when Australia's partner force in Afghanistan, Military Special Afghan Police, they work one with the other, approved by the Afghan government, never once made a single report about atrocities or murders of civilians. I mean, before you took charge of this portfolio, were you aware that Brereton and Co reportedly advertised in Kabul for witnesses against our men?
Well, Alan, I'm just not going to comment on the process that was in place before I took up this role. I've made my position clear in relation to a presumption of innocence, and I believe very strongly in the rule of law in this country, and I'm not going to depart from that. If people have not done the wrong thing, then they're cleared, they get on with their lives, and I want to make sure that we can provide support to those people. Nobody has been denied the legal support that they've requested, which is, again, a key element to our legal system in this country. Yet, if people have done the wrong thing, if there is evidence that can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of
but who will fund their defence?
An Australian court.
Who will fund their defence?
We will. The Australian government will, and I've been clear about that as well. If somebody has requested legal support, they'll be provided with that support, and that's been the case in 47 instances so far. I'm not aware of any cases where people have been knocked back for legal assistance, and if it is, then it'll be overturned because they deserve the support of proper legal representation. And if somebody is proven to have committed a crime beyond reasonable doubt in a criminal proceeding, then they'll answer that outcome like any other Australian would, no more, no less.
Did it help, though, the morale of all of these men, because I've spoken to them, you have, when the Prime Minister said before the report was released that it was full of brutal truths? Brutal truths. This stuff hadn't even been tested.
Well, there are matters that are being looked at by investigators at the moment. As I say, I think some people will be cleared because there will be no case against that person. In other circumstances, they'll look more closely at the evidence that's there. And that's the process as it should operate. That is an adherence to the rule of law, and we're not going to deviate from that 1 inch.
Good to talk to you, and thank you for your time. By the way, I hope we can talk again. There are so many issues, but you do understand, I know, the demoralisation of people as a result of all that has happened here. It does help when you speak and clarify all of this, and we're very, very grateful for your time.
Thanks, Alan. Take care. My clear message, like you, to all of our Defence Force personnel is that we do provide support to them. We value what they do in our country's name, and I will do whatever it takes to protect them and their interests and the interests of their families as well. Many of them suffer because of the absence of one of their loved ones who serves in the ADF or somebody who has been unfairly treated. I want to make sure that we can provide a better outcome for those people in particular.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for your time, Peter Dutton. Doing a magnificent job. And as I said, he's the man who's really added new credibility to the Liberal Party.